A businessman on the verge of getting married ended up in a coma after an accident. His family and business partners took control of his finances, and he lost almost everything. His fiancée began to distance herself more and more from him. However, upon waking up, he was shocked to see that it was the cleaning lady who had been taking care of him. Before hearing this passionate account, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more touching stories. The morning sun illuminated the gardens of the Thompson estate, where hundreds of white flower arrangements decorated the path to the altar. Ethan Thompson, at 32 years old, adjusted his Italian silk tie one last time in front of the mirror. His reflection revealed not only the impeccable designer suit, but also the face of someone who had achieved everything he had ever dreamed of. He was CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the country, was about to marry Olivia Rothschild, and his fortune only grew. "It's almost time," said Jake, his best friend and best man, entering the room. "The guests are already arriving." Ethan smiled, but there was something in his eyes that betrayed an uneasiness. Perhaps it was just the natural nervousness of a groom, but an inner voice insisted on questioning whether Olivia was really the right person. In recent months, since he had taken over the presidency of the company, she seemed more interested in appearing in the society columns than in building a life together. "I need to take a walk before the ceremony," said Ethan, grabbing the keys to his red Ferrari. Jake tried to argue that it wasn't a good idea, but he knew his friend well enough to know it was useless to try to stop him. The route along the winding road leading to the mansion had always been his refuge to organize his thoughts. The cool morning breeze came in through the car windows, bringing the scent of the ocean. Ethan slowed down as he approached a curve, when a dog unexpectedly appeared on the road. As he swerved, he lost control of the vehicle. The world spun in slow motion. The impact was violent, and the last thing Ethan saw was the blue sky through the shattered windshield. At St. Luke's Hospital, the routine followed its normal flow. Sarah Miller, 28 years old, pushed her cleaning cart through the corridors of the ICU ward. Her brown hair was tied in a simple bun, and her light blue uniform contrasted with her tanned skin. Unlike many who worked there, she always dedicated a few minutes to talk to the patients, even those who were unconscious. The agitated arrival of a medical team caught her attention. She quickly moved her cart to make way for the stretcher, carrying a young, well-dressed man, apparently the victim of a serious accident. In the hours that followed, the hospital was taken over by reporters and photographers. The patient was Ethan Thompson, the billionaire who should have been getting married at that moment. Sarah observed from afar the coming and going of important people, including an elegant woman who arrived crying dramatically, but didn't stay more than 15 minutes. At night, when the movement died down, Sarah entered the room to clean. She looked at the unconscious man in the bed and felt an inexplicable compassion. As she wiped the bedside table, she began to speak softly. "You know, Mr. Thompson, you chose a pretty important day to end up here. But don't worry, there are a lot of people rooting for your recovery." She had no idea that those simple words would mark the beginning of a story that would change not only Ethan's life, but her own. In the days that would follow, while the world out there speculated about the future of the Thompson empire, inside that hospital room, something much more valuable than any fortune would be born. The night was advancing, and Sarah finished her shift with one last look at the patient. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Thompson. Tomorrow I'll bring a book to read to you. Did you know they say people in comas can hear?" Outside the hospital, the photographers were still on stakeout, eager for any news about the billionaire's health condition. But the true story, the one no one could have predicted, was just beginning to unfold in the silent corridors of that ICU. The days turned into weeks, and room 507 of the ICU became the stage for a parade of contrasting personalities. Olivia Rothschild, the fiancée, always appeared during the hours when there was the most press movement, wearing impeccable clothes and perfect makeup, as if each visit were a photo shoot. "My love, you need to wake up," she would say, fixing her hair, while a photographer from Society and Power magazine captured the moment. "How am I going to organize our wedding without you?" Sarah, who was cleaning the corridor near the room, couldn't help but overhear these theatrical visits. She noticed how Olivia constantly checked her cell phone and barely touched Ethan. As soon as the cameras moved away, she would quickly say goodbye, always with an excuse about unavoidable commitments. During the night shifts, when silence dominated the hospital, Sarah took advantage of her breaks to enter room 507, She always carried a different book, borrowed from the public library near her house. She started with The Little Prince, her favorite story. "What is essential is invisible to the eye," she read in a low voice, sitting in the armchair next to the bed. "You know, Mr. Thompson, sometimes I think you might be listening. It must be hard to be here alone for so long." On one of these nights, Sarah noticed a subtle change in Ethan's expression. She immediately called the on-duty nurse, but the doctors assured her it was just an involuntary reflex. Even so, she maintained her routine of readings and conversations. Meanwhile, behind the scenes of the Thompson empire, suspicious movements began to happen. Alexander, Ethan's older brother, called an extraordinary meeting of the administrative board. With old power of attorney in hand, he gradually began to take control of the companies. "It's just temporary," he assured the shareholders, "until my brother recovers." But his eyes revealed other intentions, especially when he met secretly with Michael Davis, Ethan's main competitor in the market. Alexander's visits to the hospital became increasingly rare, always accompanied by lawyers and papers for signature. Sarah observed everything with a mixture of concern and indignation. During her nightly conversations with Ethan, she shared her impressions. "You have so many people around you, but sometimes you seem so alone," she commented, while arranging the wilted flowers that Olivia had brought for the photos. "But don't worry, as long as I'm here, you'll have company." One night, while reading Don Quixote, Sarah was surprised by a conversation in the corridor. Olivia was arguing with Alexander in raised tones. "We need to resolve this soon," she was saying. "I can't keep waiting indefinitely. The press is already starting to speculate about the wedding." "Be patient," Alexander replied. "Soon we'll have total control and you'll have your part as we agreed." Sarah felt her heart tighten. Those words revealed much more than just concern for Ethan's health. She then decided that, in addition to the readings, she would start telling Ethan everything she witnessed, hoping that somehow he could hear and understand. "You need to wake up," she whispered, gently holding his hand. "There's a lot going on that you need to know." That night, for the first time, Sarah felt a slight squeeze on her hand. It was so subtle that she could have imagined it, but her heart knew it was real. The heart monitor registered a small change, and she smiled, keeping that moment as a precious secret between them. Outside the hospital, life went on. The headlines about the billionaire in a coma were beginning to lose space to other scandals. But in the corridors of St. Luke's, a story of loyalty and true affection continued to develop, silent and deep, like the words of the books that Sarah read every night. Autumn arrived in New York City, painting the trees in the hospital garden with golden hues. It had been 2 months since the accident, and the routine in room 507 had established itself with an almost poetic regularity. Sarah, now familiar with every detail of the environment, noticed the slightest changes in Ethan's condition. "You look different today," she commented one morning while changing the water in the flowers. "Your expression seems more serene." The doctors were beginning to notice changes in the neurological exams. Dr. Henry Martinez, the chief neurologist, started making more frequent visits, always accompanied by a team of residents. Sarah took advantage of these moments to absorb every technical information, later researching on the internet the medical terms she didn't understand. "The brainwave patterns are changing," Dr. Martinez explained during a visit. "There are promising signs of increased neural activity." Meanwhile, in the outside world, changes at Thompson Technologies were happening at an accelerated pace. Alexander, with his new position of power, began implementing a series of strategic changes. Longtime employees loyal to Ethan were gradually replaced, and new contracts were being signed with partner companies of the Davis Group. Olivia, in turn, began to be seen at social events, accompanied by Michael Davis Jr., the son of Ethan's biggest competitor. The photos, although discreet, didn't go unnoticed by Sarah, who religiously followed the news about the Thompson family on her cell phone during breaks. "You won't believe what's been happening," she whispered during her night visits. "But don't worry, I'm keeping all the newspaper clippings. One day you'll know everything." It was on one of these nights, while reading The Count of Monte Cristo, a choice she considered ironically appropriate, that Sarah witnessed something extraordinary. During the passage where the protagonist discovered a betrayal, Ethan's fingers visibly moved, and his eyes, although still closed, showed movement under the eyelids. Excited, she pressed the emergency button. The medical team arrived quickly, and for the first time in many weeks there was a climate of real hope in the air. "These are clear signs of emerging consciousness," confirmed Dr. Martinez after a series of exams. "We need to notify the family." The news spread quickly. Alexander appeared at the hospital within hours, accompanied by his lawyers. Olivia, who was at a charity event, took longer to arrive, but when she appeared she was impeccably dressed and made up, ready for the cameras that surely awaited her. Sarah observed everything from afar, feeling a mixture of joy for Ethan's possible recovery and apprehension about the behavior of those around him. During her nightly reading, she shared her thoughts. "You know, Mr. Thompson, there are so many people here worried about what will happen when you wake up, but I just want you to be okay. That alone would be miracle enough." The following days were filled with intense activity. Specialists were called in, new exams were performed, and room 507 saw a constant coming and going of important people. Sarah maintained her routine of cleaning and care, but now had to choose more discreet moments for her readings. One night, when she was almost finishing her shift, she had a surprise. As she entered the room for her last check of the day, she found Ethan with his eyes slightly open, staring fixedly at the ceiling. Her heart raced, and for a moment she was paralyzed at the door. "Mr. Thompson," she called softly, approaching the bed. His eyes, still disoriented, moved slowly in her direction. It was a brief moment, but to Sarah, it seemed like an eternity. That gaze, although confused, had life, and for the first time since the accident, she felt that Ethan was really there, present, beginning his journey back to the world of the conscious. The heart monitor registered a change in his heartbeat, and Sarah quickly called the medical team. While the professionals took care of the necessary procedures, she discreetly stepped away, her hands trembling with emotion. Outside the room, she leaned against the wall and let the tears run silently down her face, thanking in a silent prayer. The night was just beginning, and no one could predict the revelations and changes that the next few days would bring. But at that moment, in the silent corridor of St. Luke's Hospital, Sarah was certain of one thing: that gaze had changed everything. Ethan's awakening process was gradual, like the sunrise after a long night. The first days were marked by brief moments of consciousness, interspersed with periods of deep sleep. The medical team maintained cautious optimism, monitoring every sign of progress. Sarah continued her routine at the hospital, but now needed to be even more discreet in her visits. The room was always full of important people, specialist doctors, and especially Alexander and his lawyers, who seemed more concerned with documents than with Ethan's recovery. On a particularly busy morning, while performing the room cleaning, Sarah noticed that Ethan was watching her. Unlike the vague looks of previous days, there was a glimmer of recognition in his eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," she said softly, trying to control the emotion in her voice. Ethan tried to speak, but his throat, after so long without use, wouldn't allow it. His eyes, however, followed her every movement around the room. Sarah realized he was trying to communicate and approached the bed. "Do you want some water?" she asked, picking up the cup with the straw. He nodded slightly, and when their gazes met during the simple act of drinking water, something indefinable passed between them. It was as if, even without words, Ethan conveyed that he recognized her from the long nights of reading. That afternoon, Olivia made her triumphant entrance into the hospital, accompanied by an entourage of assistants and carrying enormous flower arrangements. Upon seeing Ethan awake, her reaction was theatrical. "My love, finally! You can't imagine how difficult these months have been without you," she exclaimed, already strategically positioned for the photos her assistant was taking. Sarah, who was discreetly organizing the cleaning products on her cart, noticed the discomfort on Ethan's face. His eyes, previously attentive and alive when observing her, now showed a mixture of confusion and unease. The following days brought significant progress. Ethan began to regain his speech, first in hoarse whispers, then in short but clear sentences. Dr. Martinez was satisfied with his neurological recovery, but warned that the rehabilitation process would be long. It was during one of these nights, when the movement in the hospital decreased, that something unexpected happened. Sarah was about to start her night rounds when she heard raised voices coming from Ethan's room. Alexander was arguing with Olivia in the corridor, unaware that his brother was awake and could hear them. We need to finalize the transfer of shares before he fully regains consciousness, Alexander was saying urgently. And what do I do with the press? They won't stop asking me about the wedding, Olivia retorted. Keep up appearances for a few more weeks. After the deal with the Davises is closed, you can claim that the trauma changed him too much and move on with your life with Michael Jr. Sarah felt her heart tighten. She looked into the room and saw that Ethan had his eyes open, fixed on the ceiling, but his expression made it clear that he was hearing every word. Without making a sound, she entered the room and stood beside him, a silent presence of support. When Alexander and Olivia finally moved away, Ethan turned his face to Sarah. His eyes were watery, not with sadness, but with a mixture of anger and determination. You've always been here, haven't you? He asked, his voice still weak but firm. Yes, Mr. Thompson, she replied, nervously adjusting her uniform. The readings, I heard them. Every night, he continued, making an effort to speak. You were the only one who really cared. Sarah felt her own tears forming, but maintained her professional composure. You need to rest now. Tomorrow will be a new day. Before she could move away, Ethan held her hand with what little strength he had. I need your help, he whispered. You're the only one I can trust. That moment marked the beginning of a silent alliance between them. Sarah knew she was about to get involved in something much bigger than her simple work routine, but something in her heart told her she was on the right path. Outside the hospital, the New York night continued its course, oblivious to the drama unfolding in room 507. The stars shone in the sky, silent witnesses to a story that was just beginning to reveal its true colors. The morning arrived with a different energy in room 507. Ethan, now more conscious and alert, began to realize the true extent of what had happened during his coma period. With Sarah's help, who discreetly brought him newspapers and magazines, he was piecing together the puzzle of the last few months. They sold the Green Technology division, Ethan muttered, flipping through a specialized magazine. It was my life's project. Sarah, who was organizing the medications on the bedside table, observed the growing frustration on his face. During her nighttime internet research, she had learned about the revolutionary projects Ethan had developed, especially in the area of sustainable energy. You can rebuild everything, she said softly, while adjusting his pillow. Sometimes we need to lose something to build something better. Ethan looked at her with interest. Do you always have these wise phrases? Do you learn them from the books you read? A soft blush colored Sarah's cheeks. Actually, I learned more from life. I haven't always had much, but I learned to value what matters. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Martinez, who brought encouraging news about Ethan's physical recovery. You're progressing faster than expected, the doctor commented, examining his reflexes. Soon we'll be able to start intensive physiotherapy. After the doctor left, Ethan asked Sarah to close the door. With difficulty, he sat up straighter in bed. I need you to help me make some calls, he said, his voice firmer. There are people I trust who need to know I'm lucid. Sarah hesitated. But you have your cell phone, which is with Olivia, he interrupted. And I'm sure every call I make is being monitored. That afternoon, using her own prepaid cell phone, Sarah made contact with James Mendez, Ethan's former personal lawyer, who had been mysteriously removed by Alexander. The conversation was brief and coded, but the message was delivered. Meanwhile, Olivia was making her daily visit, always surrounded by cameras. Darling, I brought your favorite cologne, she announced, displaying an expensive bottle. And look who came to visit you. To everyone's surprise, Michael Davis Jr. entered the room with his rehearsed smile and impeccable suit. Ethan observed the way he and Olivia moved in sync, the small exchanges of glances they thought went unnoticed. Sarah, pretending to clean the window glass, noticed the tension in Ethan's fingers, which slightly gripped the sheet. She knew he was putting together every detail, every gesture, constructing the map of the betrayal he had suffered. At night, when the hospital quieted down, Sarah returned to the room with a new book, but this time Ethan was awake, waiting for her. You know what's most ironic, he commented as she sat in the familiar armchair. I always knew Olivia didn't really love me, but I believed that at least my brother. His voice faltered, and Sarah instinctively held his hand. The touch, simple and sincere, conveyed more comfort than any words could express. Do you want me to read a bit? She offered, showing the book she had brought, The Secret Garden. Why that one? Ethan asked, curious. Because it's a story about rebirth, she answered with a soft smile. About how sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what really matters. As she read, Ethan observed her concentrated profile, the way her eyes shone as she brought the words to life. It was so different from everything he had known in his world of business and appearances. There, in that simple moment, was a truth that all his money had never been able to buy. Outside the hospital, the city continued its frenetic rhythm. Cars honked, people rushed to their appointments, deals were closed in mirrored meeting rooms. But in room 507, a new kind of wealth was being discovered, one that couldn't be measured in figures or stocks. Ethan fell asleep to the sound of Sarah's soft voice, his dreams no longer tormented by betrayals, but populated by secret gardens and possibilities of new beginnings. The night advanced, guarding in its dark mantle the secrets of a heart that was beginning to heal in unexpected ways. The law office of Mendez and Associates was buzzing with activity that morning. James Mendez, after receiving the coded contact about Ethan, began to discreetly move his pieces on the chessboard. Years of experience had taught him that in power games, timing was everything. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ethan was starting his physiotherapy. Sarah, even outside her working hours, remained nearby, offering silent support. She observed how he pushed himself in each exercise, his determination growing with each small progress. "You're doing very well," commented the physiotherapist Dr. Paul after another exhausting session. "I need to regain my strength quickly," Ethan replied, wiping the sweat from his face. His eyes met Sarah's, who was discreetly organizing the equipment used. That afternoon, Alexander appeared for one of his rare visits, accompanied by 2 executives from Davis Enterprises. Ethan pretended to be more debilitated than he really was, a strategy that Sarah immediately noticed. "Brother, we've come to discuss some pending company matters," Alexander began, his voice falsely cordial. "Here's just a few signatures to regularize what was decided during your absence." Ethan examined the documents with apparent difficulty. "I'm very tired today, Alexander. Can we look at this later?" "But these are urgent documents," insisted one of the executives. "Gentlemen, the patient needs to rest," intervened Sarah, entering the room with her cleaning cart. "Doctor's orders." Alexander shot an irritated look in her direction, but couldn't openly contest a hospital employee without drawing unwanted attention. Reluctantly, he put away the papers. After his departure, Ethan smiled at Sarah. "You're becoming an excellent actress." "I learned from the best," she replied, referring to Olivia's theatrical visits. At night, while performing her usual reading, Sarah was surprised by an unexpected visit. James Mendez, the lawyer, appeared outside visiting hours, using his influence to gain access to the room. "Ethan, my friend," he greeted, closing the door. "I've discovered things you need to know." Sarah made a move to leave, but Ethan stopped her. "Stay, please. I trust you." James opened his briefcase, revealing a series of documents. "Your brother not only sold the Green Technology Division, but is about to merge with the Davises, a merger that would essentially hand over control of Thompson Technologies to them." Ethan listened to everything in silence, his expression hardening with each new revelation. "And Olivia?" "She's involved up to her neck," confirmed James. "The bank transfers show substantial payments from Davis Enterprises to an account in her name in the Cayman Islands." Sarah, who listened to everything while silently organizing the medications, felt her heart tighten as she saw the pain in Ethan's eyes. Even though he already suspected all of this, having the confirmations was different. "But there's something they don't know," continued James, a small smile forming. "Your last change to the will, made 2 weeks before the accident. The one Alexander thinks he destroyed." Ethan adjusted himself in the bed, more alert. "The copy that's with—" "Exactly," confirmed James. "And it gives us enough time to act. But we need to be discreet. They can't know that you're this lucid and informed." After the lawyer's departure, a heavy silence hung in the room. Sarah continued her routine, giving Ethan the space he needed to process all the information. "Sarah," he finally called, his voice soft but firm, "you've been much more than a hospital employee. You've been my only true friend in this moment." She stopped what she was doing, feeling the weight of those words. "You don't owe me anything. I just did what any person should do." "But that's exactly it," he replied, a different gleam in his eyes. "You did what was right without expecting anything in return. That's rarer than all the money I've ever had." The night advanced outside, and with it new plans began to form. In room 507, between the shadows and the soft lights, an unlikely alliance was strengthening, one based not on contracts or interests, but on something much more valuable, true trust. Sarah picked up her book, preparing for another session of nightly reading. But this time there was something different in the air, a sense that the pages they were about to turn wouldn't just be those of the book in her hands, but those of a much larger story that was just beginning to be written. The first week of intensive physiotherapy brought more than just physical progress for Ethan. Each new movement conquered, each step taken in the hospital corridor, represented an advance in his plan to regain control. Sarah, always present in her free moments, silently witnessed his transformation. "You don't need to spend all your free time here," Ethan said one afternoon, after a particularly exhausting session. Sarah, who was arranging the newly arrived flowers, another theatrical delivery from Olivia, smiled softly. "I'm not here out of obligation, Mr. Thompson." "Ethan," he corrected. "After everything, I think we can drop the formalities." The sound of heels in the corridor interrupted the moment. Olivia entered the room, impeccable as always, followed by her personal photographer. "Darling, I brought a surprise," she announced, displaying a folder of documents. "These are the new projects for our beach house. We need to decide on the decoration." Ethan looked at the papers with apparent interest, while Sarah continued her work discreetly. Through the window's reflection, she noticed how Olivia constantly checked her cell phone, probably exchanging messages with Michael Jr. "It all looks lovely, Liv," Ethan commented, his voice calculatedly weak. "But I still don't feel well enough to make important decisions." "But honey, we need to move forward with the plans. Time is passing and—" "Gentlemen, medication time," Sarah interrupted, entering with her tray. It was a lie, but she had noticed the fatigue in Ethan's eyes. After Olivia's disgruntled departure, Ethan let out a heavy sigh. "How could I have been so blind for so long?" "Sometimes we need distance to see more clearly," Sarah replied, adjusting his pillow. That night, while reading The Picture of Dorian Gray, Sarah was surprised by a question from Ethan. "What's your life like outside of here?" She hesitated, marking the page in the book. "Pretty simple. I live with my grandmother in a small apartment in Queens. On weekends, I tutor kids from the neighborhood." "And your parents?" "My father left when I was little. My mother, well, she passed away 5 years ago. Since then, it's just been me and Grandma Rose." Ethan observed how her eyes sparkled when talking about her grandmother. "It must be nice to have someone so special." "She's my rock," Sarah confirmed. "She taught me that wealth has nothing to do with money." A comfortable silence settled between them. Ethan realized that, for the first time in a long time, he was having a genuine conversation with someone. "You know," he began, "before the accident, I had everything money could buy. But now I realize I had nothing of what really matters." Sarah looked at him with understanding. "Sometimes we need to lose something to value what's truly important." The moment was interrupted by knocks on the door. It was James Mendez, bringing news about the investigations. "The evidence is piling up," he informed in a low voice. "Alexander has been careless, too confident in his position. And the merger documents," Ethan asked, "scheduled for 2 weeks from now. They want your signature before that." Sarah, who pretended to clean the furniture, absorbed every word. Her constant presence had become so natural that even James no longer worried about speaking in front of her. After the lawyer's departure, Ethan became pensive. "Sarah," he called softly, "I need to ask you something important." She approached the bed, noticing the seriousness in his voice. "When all this is over, when the truth comes out, promise you won't disappear." The request caught her by surprise. Her heart raced, but she maintained her composure. "Why would I do that?" "Because that's what good people like you do. They fulfill their role and move on without expecting recognition." Sarah felt her cheeks flush. "Don't worry," she replied simply. "I'm not going anywhere." The night advanced outside, and with it something new grew inside that hospital room, something that couldn't be measured, calculated, or negotiated. Something that, unlike Thompson Technologies stocks, couldn't be bought or sold. It was a feeling that built in silence between book pages and whispered conversations, between simple care and understanding looks. A feeling that, like the plants Sarah tended on the room's windowsill, grew slowly but with deep and true roots. The New York autumn painted the trees in the hospital garden with golden and reddish tones. a perfect metaphor for the changes that were approaching. Ethan, now able to walk the corridors with minimal help, felt anxiety grow with each passing day. The date of the board meeting, where the merger would be presented for approval, was rapidly approaching. Sarah, always attentive, noticed the tension in his shoulders during physiotherapy sessions. "Breathe deeply," she whispered, helping him balance. "One step at a time, remember?" That morning, Alexander appeared earlier than usual, accompanied by 2 company lawyers. "Brother, we have urgent matters to discuss," he announced, his falsely cordial tone barely disguising his impatience. Ethan, seated in the armchair near the window, feigned a weakness he no longer felt. "Of course, Alexander, what happened?" "It's just some documents that need your signature," one of the lawyers explained, extending a folder. "Formalities to ensure business continuity during your recovery." Sarah, who was adjusting the bed sheets, exchanged a quick glance with Ethan. They both knew what those papers really meant. "You know, Alexander," Ethan began, his voice calm, "being here has made me think a lot about life, about what really matters." Alexander shifted, uneasy. "Philosophizing is great, brother, but we have deadlines to meet." Ethan slowly leafed through the documents as if each page required immense effort. "I think I need more time to analyze this. Maybe after the next consultation with Dr. Martinez." The frustration was visible on Alexander's face. "Ethan, the company can't wait. We need to act now." "Gentlemen," Sarah intervened, her voice firm but polite. "The patient needs to rest. Doctor's orders." Alexander shot an irritated look in her direction, but couldn't openly contest her. Reluctantly, he put away the papers. "We'll be back tomorrow," he said, his voice barely containing his anger. "And I hope you'll be more willing." After his departure, Ethan let out a heavy sigh. "They're getting desperate." Sarah approached, offering a glass of water. You're doing the right thing." "Sometimes I wonder," Ethan confessed, his voice low. "All this struggle, is it really worth it?" Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes meeting his. "Ethan, remember that book I read last week? The Little Prince?" He nodded, curious about where she was going with this. "There's a phrase that says, 'What is essential is invisible to the eye,'" she continued. "It's not just about the company or the money. It's about integrity, about being true to who you really are." Ethan observed her, amazed at the wisdom in her simple words. "How can someone so young be so wise?" She smiled, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. "Maybe I've learned a few things reading to you all these nights." The moment was interrupted by James Mendez's arrival. The lawyer brought important news. "We did it," he announced, closing the door. "The evidence is all gathered. Suspicious transfers, fraudulent contracts, even compromising emails between Alexander and Michael Davis." Ethan straightened in the armchair, his posture visibly changing. "And the board? They've been discreetly contacted. They're ready for an emergency meeting as soon as you give the signal." Sarah observed the transformation in Ethan. The fragile man from moments ago gave way to the astute executive she had only heard about. "Tomorrow," Ethan decided, "when Alexander returns with the documents, we'll deliver the final blow." After James left, a silence charged with expectation took over the room. Sarah, feeling the weight of the moment, began to withdraw. "Sarah," Ethan called, his voice soft, "thank you for everything." She stopped at the door, turning to him. "You don't need to thank me. I just did what was right," he completed, a genuine smile on his lips. "And that, as you taught me, is the most valuable thing of all." That night, as the city outside prepared to sleep in room 507 of St. Luke's Hospital, 2 hearts beat in sync, anticipating the dawn that would bring not just a new day, but the beginning of a new journey. A journey that both felt would take them down paths neither could have imagined when their lives first crossed in that same room, weeks ago. The dawn brought with it a palpable energy to room 507. Ethan, dressed in a suit that James Mendez had discreetly brought, adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. His movements, still a bit hesitant due to weeks of inactivity, carried a renewed determination. Sarah entered silently, carrying a tray with breakfast. Their eyes met through the reflection, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. "Are you ready?" she finally asked, placing the tray on the table. Ethan turned, a confident smile on his lips. More than ever. The plan was simple but risky. Alexander would arrive soon with the merger documents, expecting to find a weakened and submissive brother, Instead, he would face not only Ethan, but the entire board of Thompson Technologies, secretly summoned for an emergency meeting at the hospital itself. At 9 o'clock sharp, Alexander's familiar footsteps echoed down the corridor. Sarah, pretending to perform her routine tasks, felt her heart race. "Good morning, brother," Alexander announced, entering the room with his usual confidence. "I hope today you're more cooperative." Ethan, seated in the armchair near the window, maintained his neutral expression. "Of course, Alexander. After all, it's the future of the company that's at stake, isn't it?" Alexander's smile faltered for an instant, but he quickly composed himself. "Exactly. So if you could sign these documents." At that moment, the door opened again. James Mendes entered, followed by the members of the administrative board of Thompson Technologies. The shock was visible on Alexander's face. What does this mean?" he stammered, looking around confused. Ethan stood up, his posture erect and confident. "It means, my dear brother, that the game is over." In the minutes that followed, an avalanche of revelations flooded the room. James presented the meticulously collected evidence: compromising emails, suspicious bank transfers, fraudulent contracts. Each new piece of evidence was like a nail in the coffin of Alexander's ambitions. "This is absurd," he tried to argue, his voice trembling. "Everything I did was for the good of the company." "Including trying to permanently remove me," Ethan retorted, his voice laden with hurt and disappointment. The silence that followed was deafening. The board members, shocked by the revelations, exchanged incredulous looks. Sarah, who observed everything from a corner of the room, felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Her mind wandered to all the nights she had read to Ethan, to every whispered conversation, every moment of shared vulnerability. Now seeing him standing, strong and determined, she wondered what her role would be from here on out. The meeting extended for hours. Decisions were made. Votes were cast. In the end, Alexander was removed from all his functions in the company, and a more in-depth investigation was ordered. When the last board member left the room, Ethan finally allowed himself to relax. He sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the events visible on his shoulders. "It's over," he murmured, more to himself than to others. Sarah approached hesitantly, offering a glass of water. "You did it," she said softly. Ethan raised his eyes, meeting hers. For a moment, all the strength and determination he had demonstrated gave way to a vulnerability that only Sarah knew. "No," he replied, taking the glass. "We did it." James, who was organizing the documents, interrupted the moment. "Ethan, we have a lot of work ahead. The press will want answers. The shareholders are anxious." Ethan raised his hand, silencing his friend. "Tomorrow, James. Today. I just want to breathe." When they were finally alone, a comfortable silence settled between Ethan and Sarah. She began to organize the room more out of habit than necessity. "Sarah," Ethan called, his voice soft. "What happens now?" She stopped what she was doing, turning to him. "What do you mean? With you? With me? With us?" Her heart raced. All the emotions she had suppressed over the past few weeks threatened to overflow. I don't know," she answered honestly. "Your world is so different from mine." Ethan stood up, approaching her. "Maybe it's time to build a new world, one where what really matters is at the center." Outside, the afternoon sun bathed New York City in golden tones. In room 507, two hearts beat in unison, on the verge of a new beginning. The pages of Ethan and Sarah's lifebook were about to turn, revealing chapters yet unwritten, but full of promises and possibilities. 2. The days following the revelation were a whirlwind of activity. St. Luke's Hospital, once a quiet refuge, became the epicenter of a media storm. Journalists camped at the entrance, eager for any information about the Thompson miracle and the corporate scandal that accompanied it. Ethan, still officially hospitalized, conducted most of the business from his improvised room office. Between virtual meetings with the board and carefully orchestrated interviews, he found moments to reflect on the future. Sarah, for her part, tried to maintain her normal routine, but it was impossible to ignore the changes around her. The curious looks from colleagues, the whispers in the corridors, all indicated that her life would never be the same again. On a particularly busy afternoon, while organizing Ethan's medications, she caught him looking at her with a thoughtful expression. "What is it?" she asked, feeling her cheeks flush under his intense gaze. Ethan smiled softly. I was thinking about how life takes turns. A few weeks ago, I was just another patient to you. You were never just another patient, she replied, her voice low but firm. The moment was interrupted by James Mendez's arrival, bringing the latest updates on the case. The investigations are progressing, he informed, sitting in the armchair. Alexander is cooperating, probably hoping for a lighter sentence. Ethan nodded, his expression serious. And Olivia? James hesitated for a moment. She held a press conference this morning. She claimed she was also deceived by Alexander, and that she's devastated by the revelations. Sarah, who was pretending to be busy arranging the flowers on the table, couldn't contain a small snort of indignation. Ethan looked at her, an understanding smile on his lips. Let her be, he said, surprising both James and Sarah. What she thinks or does doesn't matter anymore. After the lawyer left, a comfortable silence settled in the room. Ethan stood up, walking to the window. The view of the city stretched out before him, the skyscrapers reflecting the afternoon sun. You know, Sarah, he began, his voice soft, I spent most of my life chasing after success, recognition. I thought I had everything, but in reality I had nothing of what really matters. She approached, stopping by his side. And what really matters. Ethan turned, his eyes meeting hers. True connection, empathy, the ability to see beauty in simple things. Sarah's heart raced. She knew they were on the brink of something new, something scary and exciting at the same time. Ethan, she began, but was interrupted by knocks on the door. It was Dr. Martinez bringing the results of the latest exams. Good news, he announced, smiling. You're officially cleared for discharge. The news, although expected, caught both of them by surprise. Suddenly, the safe bubble that the hospital represented was about to burst. That night, as Sarah helped Ethan organize his things for departure the next day, the air was charged with unspoken expectation. What are you going to do now? Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Sarah paused, a folded shirt in her hands. Continue my life, I guess. Return to normal routine. Ethan approached, gently taking the shirt from her hands. And if I asked you not to return to normal routine? She raised her eyes, meeting his. What do you mean? I mean, I don't want to lose what we've built here, he replied, his voice laden with emotion. I know you come from a different world than mine, but what if we built a new world together? Sarah's heart felt like it wanted to leap out of her chest. All the barriers she had carefully erected over the weeks began to crumble. Ethan, I don't know if I can. Your world is so different, so... He gently interrupted her, placing a finger on her lips. My world is where you are. The rest are just details. Outside, night was falling over New York City, the city lights creating a magical scenario. In room 507, two souls who had met in the most unlikely circumstances were on the verge of a new beginning. Sarah, with tears in her eyes, finally let the last barriers fall. Okay, she whispered. Let's build this new world together. Ethan pulled her into an embrace, feeling as if for the first time in his life he was truly home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, but at that moment, in the silence of that hospital room, two lives were intertwining in a silent promise of a shared future. The morning of Ethan's hospital discharge dawned with a different energy. Room 507, which for so many weeks had been the epicenter of drama, revelations, and the birth of an unlikely love, was now almost empty. The flowers had been donated to other patients, the medical equipment removed, leaving only a few suitcases and the anxious presence of Ethan and Sarah. Are you ready? Sarah asked, adjusting Ethan's tie one last time. He smiled, taking her hands in his. More than ever. And you? She hesitated for a moment. I think so. It's just that everything seems so unreal. Before Ethan could respond, knocks on the door announced Dr. Martinez's arrival for the final discharge procedures. After some recommendations and a warm exchange of thanks, the moment both had anticipated and feared arrived, leaving the hospital. In the lobby, a small crowd of reporters was waiting. James Mendez, always efficient, had already prepared a discreet escape route through the back. But Ethan, surprising everyone, decided to face the press. They deserve some answers, he said, gently squeezing Sarah's hand, and I have nothing more to hide. In front of the cameras and microphones, Ethan spoke with an honesty that surprised even the most cynical journalists. He thanked the medical team, talked about plans to restructure the company, and to the astonishment of many, introduced Sarah not just as someone who helped in his recovery, but as a fundamental part of his future. Sometimes, we need to lose everything to find what really matters, he said, looking directly at Sarah. And I found much more than I expected in this hospital. Leaving the reporters stunned by his statements, Ethan and Sarah entered the waiting car, finally leaving St. Luke's behind. The journey to Ethan's apartment in the Upper East Side was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. For Sarah, it was like entering a completely new world. The luxurious building, the attentive doorman, the mirrored elevator, everything screamed a reality very distant from hers. As they entered the apartment, the magnitude of the change in their lives became even more evident. The spacious and elegantly decorated space contrasted strongly with the small apartment Sarah shared with her grandmother. "Wow," was all she managed to say, looking around in awe. Ethan observed her with a mixture of anxiety and tenderness. "It's a lot, isn't it? We can move to a smaller place if you prefer. Actually, I've been thinking—" He was interrupted by the ring of his cell phone. It was James with urgent updates about the company. Ethan hesitated, looking from Sarah to the phone. "Answer it," she said softly. "I know you have a lot of work ahead." While Ethan talked in the office, Sarah wandered around the apartment, feeling out of place among the expensive furniture and artwork on the walls. She stopped in front of a photo of Ethan with his parents taken years ago. They looked happy, carefree, so different from the man she had met in the hospital. "It was my 18th birthday," said Ethan, surprising her. He had finished the call and was now by her side, looking at the photo with a mixture of nostalgia and sadness. "You all look so happy," Sarah commented. Ethan sighed. "We were, in a way, but we were also blind to many important things." Turning to her, he took her hands. "Sarah, I know all of this is a lot to process. If you want to go back to your home, to your grandmother, I would understand." She looked at him, feeling the weight of the decision she needed to make. Part of her wanted to run back to the comfort of the familiar, to her simple but safe life. But another part, a part that grew with each moment, knew she couldn't abandon what they had built. "No," she finally said, her voice firm. "I'm here because I want to be, because I chose to be. It will be difficult, it will be strange, but I want to try." The relief on Ethan's face was palpable. He pulled her into a tight embrace, as if afraid she might disappear at any moment. "We'll make this work," he murmured into her hair. Step by step, day by day. That night, as the city outside continued its frantic rhythm, Ethan and Sarah sat on the apartment's balcony, observing the lights of New York. The future was uncertain, full of challenges they could hardly imagine. But there, at that moment, with hands intertwined and hearts beating in sync, they knew they had found something rare and precious. "Where do we go from here?" Sarah asked, her voice soft in the night. Ethan smiled, gently squeezing her hand. "I'm not entirely sure, but I know that as long as we're together, we'll find our way." And so, under the starry sky of New York, two souls who had met in the most unlikely circumstances began to write a new chapter, not just in their individual lives, but in a shared story, full of promises, challenges, and above all, true love. The weeks following Ethan's discharge were a whirlwind of adjustments for both of them. Sarah, accustomed to her simple life and structured routine, now found herself immersed in a world of luxury and social commitments that often left her feeling uncomfortable. One morning, as Ethan prepared for his first in-person meeting at the office since the accident, Sarah surprised him with a question. "Ethan, what exactly am I to you now?" He stopped adjusting his tie, turning to face her. "What do you mean?" "Well, I'm not the hospital employee anymore, obviously, but I'm also not— well, I don't know what I am," she explained, her voice betraying a mixture of confusion and insecurity. Ethan approached, holding her hands. "You're the most important person in my life, Sarah. My partner, my confidant, my love." His words warmed her heart, but didn't completely dispel her concerns. "It's just that I feel so out of place here, like I don't belong in this world." "Then let's build our own world," Ethan replied, his voice full of determination. "One that combines the best of our two universes." That afternoon, while Ethan was at the office, Sarah decided to make a surprise visit to her grandmother, Rose. The small apartment in Queens, with its familiar smell of freshly brewed coffee and plants on the balcony, was a stark contrast to the luxurious penthouse in the Upper East Side. "My dear," exclaimed Grandma Rose, hugging her granddaughter, "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about your old grandmother." Sarah felt a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry, Grandma. The last few weeks have been intense." Seated in the small living room with steaming cups of coffee, grandmother and granddaughter talked for hours. Sarah poured out her insecurities, her fears, but also the depth of the feelings she harbored for Ethan. "My dear," said Grandma Rose, holding her granddaughter's hands, "true love doesn't look at bank accounts or addresses. If this young man makes you happy and respects you, that's what matters." Her grandmother's wise words brought new courage to Sarah. When she returned to Ethan's apartment that night, she felt lighter, more confident. Ethan welcomed her with a warm embrace. "I missed you," he murmured, kissing her forehead. "How was it with your grandmother?" "It was exactly what I needed," Sarah replied, smiling. "Ethan, I've been thinking, how about we have a dinner here, invite my grandmother, maybe some of your closest friends?" The suggestion caught Ethan by surprise, but his face lit up with the idea. "That would be perfect. We can do something informal, relaxed." In the days that followed, the two dedicated themselves to the dinner preparations. Sarah insisted on cooking herself, refusing Ethan's offer to hire a chef. "I want it to be personal, to have our touch," she explained. On the night of the dinner, the apartment was transformed. Lit candles, soft background music, and the delicious aroma of home-cooked food filled the environment. Grandma Rose was the first to arrive, followed by James Mendez and his wife, and two close friends of Ethan's from his college days. At first, the contrast between the guests was evident. Grandma Rose, with her simple dress and unpretentious manner, seemed out of place among the more sophisticated guests, but as the night progressed, the barriers began to dissolve. Ethan watched in wonder as Sarah navigated between the different groups, her smile lighting up the room. She told funny stories from her childhood, asked insightful questions about business, and even managed to make the always serious James burst into laughter with her witty observations. At one point in the evening, Ethan pulled her into a quieter corner. "You're amazing," he said, his voice full of admiration. "I knew you could do it." Sarah smiled, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. "I think I'm finally finding my place in this new world." When the last guest left, late into the night, Ethan and Sarah sat on the balcony, as they had done so many times since leaving the hospital. The city sparkled below, alive and pulsing. "You know," Ethan began, his voice soft in the night, "I spent years thinking success was having the most expensive car, the most luxurious apartment, closing the biggest deals. But today, seeing you with my friends, with your grandmother, I realized that true success is this. It's having someone to share life with. It's creating moments like this." Sarah snuggled up to him, feeling, for the first time since they left the hospital, truly at home. "I guess we're on the right path then," she whispered. And there, under the stars of New York, two worlds that once seemed incompatible merged into a new reality. One built with love, understanding, and the promise of many nights like this ahead. As the months passed, Ethan and Sarah found their rhythm together, but not everything was smooth sailing. Ethan's return to the helm of Thompson Technologies brought new challenges and pressures that sometimes threatened to disturb the balance they had built. One afternoon, Sarah arrived at Ethan's office to have lunch together, as they had planned. Upon entering, she immediately noticed the tension in the air. Ethan was on the phone, his voice firm but visibly irritated. "No, this is unacceptable," he was saying. "We need these contracts signed by the end of the week or we'll lose millions." When he finally hung up, Ethan let out a heavy sigh, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of frustration. Only then did he notice Sarah's presence. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, trying to smile. "I lost track of time." Sarah approached, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Is everything okay? You seem stressed." Ethan hesitated for a moment, as if pondering how much he should share. "It's just, things are complicated at the company. We're trying to regain the ground lost during my absence, but some partners are reluctant to renew contracts." "I understand," Sarah said softly. "Do you want to cancel lunch? I can order something for you to eat right here." No, Ethan replied quickly, standing up. "I need this time with you. It helps me keep perspective." During lunch at a nearby restaurant, Sarah noticed how Ethan constantly checked his phone, his mind clearly divided between the conversation with her and the company's problems. "Ethan," she called gently, placing her hand over his, "are you really present here with me?" The question caught him off guard. He looked at her, a mixture of guilt and realization in his eyes. "I'm sorry, You're right. I'm not being fair to you." "It's not about being fair to me," Sarah replied. "It's about finding balance. I know the company is important, but you also need to take care of yourself and us." That conversation served as a turning point. In the weeks that followed, Ethan made a conscious effort to establish clearer boundaries between work and personal life. He began to reserve evenings and weekends exclusively for Sarah and for activities they enjoyed doing together. One Saturday, Ethan surprised Sarah with an unusual idea. "How about we visit the hospital?" he suggested during breakfast. Sarah looked at him intrigued. "St. Luke's? Why?" "Well, that's where it all began, isn't it?" he replied with a smile. "Besides, I have a proposal to make to the administration." When they arrived at the hospital, they were greeted with warm smiles from the staff who had cared for Ethan. Dr. Martinez hugged them, genuinely happy to see them. "So, to what do we owe the honor of this visit?" the doctor asked after the initial greetings. Ethan smiled, exchanging a knowing look with Sarah. "Well, doctor, I've been thinking about how to give back to this hospital for everything it did for me, and not just in medical terms." In the minutes that followed, Ethan presented his proposal, a substantial donation to improve the recovery ward, including the creation of a reading program for coma patients, inspired by the nights Sarah had spent reading to him. "It's a wonderful idea," exclaimed Dr. Martinez, visibly moved. "This will make a huge difference for our patients." While Ethan discussed the details with the administration, Sarah wandered through the familiar corridors, remembering the moments she had spent there. She stopped in front of room 507, now occupied by another patient. "Thoughtful?" Ethan asked, approaching from behind and hugging her. "Just remembering how it all began," she replied, leaning back against him. "It seems like a lifetime ago." "And look where we are now," Ethan said, softly kissing her neck. "Who would have thought those reading nights would bring us here?" As they left the hospital, both felt a sense of closing one cycle and, at the same time, the beginning of something new. The donation was not just a gesture of gratitude, but a symbol of their growth as a couple. That night, sitting on the balcony of their apartment, Ethan took Sarah's hands in his. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked, curious. "For teaching me to be a better person, for showing me that there's more to life than contracts and profits, for being my partner on this journey." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. "And thank you for giving me the courage to step out of my comfort zone, for showing me that I can be more than I imagined." Under the starry New York sky, the two sealed that moment with a tender kiss, full of promises for the future. The city continued its frantic rhythm below, but there in that small space they had created together, time seemed to pause, allowing them to savor every second of their unlikely but deeply true love story. Autumn in New York brought with it not only the changing leaves, but also significant changes for Ethan and Sarah. With the Clean Energy Project finally launched and gaining international recognition, Ethan's constant travels began to decrease. On the other hand, Sarah was flourishing in her literature studies, discovering a passion that went beyond the pages of books. One night, while dining at home after a long day, Ethan surprised Sarah with an unexpected proposal. "What do you think about uniting our worlds in a more concrete way?" he asked, a gleam of excitement in his eyes. Sarah looked at him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Ethan smiled, taking her hands across the table. "I've been thinking, how about we create a foundation, something that combines my resources and your passion for literature? We could focus on bringing education and culture to underprivileged communities." The idea caught Sarah by surprise, but the more she thought about it, the more excited she became. "That would be amazing. We could create community libraries, reading incentive programs." "Exactly," Ethan exclaimed, enthusiastic about her reaction. "And we could expand the reading program for hospital patients, like we did at St. Luke's." In the weeks that followed, the couple dove headfirst into planning the foundation. Sarah brought her newly acquired experience from college and her sensitivity to community needs, while Ethan contributed his management expertise and his contacts in the business world. The project quickly took shape, and in a few months the Thompson Foundation for Education and Culture was officially launched. The inauguration ceremony was an exciting event, bringing together important figures from the business world, academics, and community leaders. Grandma Rose, Sarah's grandmother, was in the front row, her eyes shining with pride as she watched her granddaughter confidently speaking alongside Ethan. "Who would have thought," she whispered to James Mendez, who was seated beside her, "that my little girl would come so far?" The lawyer smiled, nodding. "They make quite a team. Ethan has never been so centered and focused on making a difference." As the foundation grew, Sarah found herself dividing her time between studies, volunteer work, and project management. Ethan, in turn, found a new purpose beyond business, often visiting schools and libraries supported by the foundation. One day, during a visit to a school in the Bronx, Sarah watched Ethan reading to a group of enchanted children. The scene reminded her of the nights in the hospital when she read to him, unconscious in bed. "It's amazing how things change, isn't it?" she commented later as they were driving home. Ethan looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "Well, I started by reading to you when you were in a coma, and now here we are, bringing reading to so many people." Ethan smiled, taking her hand as he drove. "You planted a seed in those days at the hospital. We're just reaping the fruits now." Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were difficult days, discussions about balancing work and personal life, moments of doubt. But with each challenge overcome, the bond between them strengthened. One night, almost a year after the foundation's launch, Ethan surprised Sarah with a special outing. He took her to Central Park, one of their favorite places in the city. Walking hand in hand under the illuminated trees, Ethan suddenly stopped, turning to her. "Sarah," he began, his voice trembling slightly with emotion, "you've changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. You showed me the true meaning of love, companionship, and purpose." Before she could respond, Ethan got down on one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as a smile illuminated her face. "Yes," she exclaimed, pulling Ethan into a tight embrace. "1,000 times yes." As Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, Sarah thought about the entire journey that had brought them here. From the hospital room to the foundation's projects, from moments of doubt to those of pure joy. Each step, each challenge, had led them to this perfect moment. Embraced under the stars of New York, Ethan and Sarah sealed their commitment with a passionate kiss. The future opened up before them, full of promises and possibilities. Together, they had built not just true love, but a legacy that would continue to touch lives far beyond their own. The city pulsed around them, a silent witness to a love story that had begun in the most unlikely circumstances and was now preparing for its next exciting chapter. The big day finally arrived. The New York Botanical Garden, chosen as the setting for Ethan and Sarah's wedding, was magically decorated. White and gold flowers adorned the path to the altar, and the soft scent of orchids hung in the air. Sarah, in her simple but elegant dress, waited anxiously backstage, her heart racing. Grandma Rose, with tears in her eyes, adjusted her granddaughter's veil. "My dear," said the grandmother, holding Sarah's hands, "you're radiant. Your parents would be so proud." Sarah hugged her grandmother, feeling a wave of emotion. "Thank you, Grandma, for everything." On the other side of the garden, Ethan nervously adjusted his tie, while James Mendez, his best man, gave him some final words of encouragement. "Are you ready for this?" asked James, smiling. Ethan took a deep breath, a serene smile forming on his lips. "More than ever." Soft music began to play, signaling the start of the ceremony. The guests turned expectantly to the central aisle, and then Sarah appeared, radiant, walking arm in arm with her grandmother. Ethan felt his heart stop for a moment when he saw her. All the moments that had brought them here, the accident, the nights in the hospital, the challenges, the joys, flashed through his mind in an instant, and he knew, with more certainty than ever, that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. When Sarah reached the altar, Ethan took her hands, his eyes shining with love and admiration. "You're beautiful," he whispered. The ceremony was touching and intimate. The vows, written by themselves, moved all present. Sarah spoke about how Ethan taught her to dream bigger, to believe in herself. Ethan, in turn, thanked Sarah for showing him the true meaning of love and purpose. "You saved me," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Not just in that hospital, but every day since then. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the joy was palpable. The kiss that sealed their union was met with applause and tears of happiness from the guests. The reception that followed was a celebration of love and new life. Friends, family, and even some beneficiaries of the Thompson Foundation gathered to celebrate. Between dances and toasts, Ethan and Sarah had a moment of quietude. "So, Mrs. Thompson," Ethan joked, pulling her close, "how do you feel?" Sarah smiled, leaning against him. "Like I'm living a dream I never want to wake up from." As the night progressed, the newlyweds prepared to leave for their honeymoon. Before they left, however, Ethan made a surprise announcement. "Sarah and I have decided that, as a wedding gift, the Thompson Foundation will inaugurate 10 new community libraries in the coming year," he declared to everyone's delight. As they said goodbye to the guests, Sarah noticed something curious. On the gift table there was a book wrapped in gold paper. Intrigued, she opened it, discovering it to be a rare edition of The Little Prince, the first book she had read to Ethan in the hospital. Inside there was a dedication. "To Sarah and Ethan, may your journey together be as magical and transformative as that of the Little Prince. May you always remember that what is essential is invisible to the eye. With love." The St. Luke's Hospital team moved. Sarah showed the book to Ethan. Both smiled, remembering where it all began. Later, as the car took them to the airport for their honeymoon, Ethan and Sarah looked out the window, watching the lights of New York shine in the night. "Where do we go from here?" Sarah asked, intertwining her fingers with his. Ethan smiled, gently kissing her hand. "To our next great adventure. Together." And so, under the starry sky of New York, a new story began. A story of love, overcoming, and purpose. Ethan and Sarah had proven that sometimes the most unlikely encounters can lead to the most beautiful destinies. As the car drove down the avenue, taking them to their shared future, both knew that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together, because they had found in each other not just true love, but a partner for life. 10 years had passed since Ethan and Sarah's wedding. The autumn sun bathed the garden of the Thompson home, where a lively birthday party was in full swing. "Mommy, Mommy," called a child's voice. "Grandpa James is telling the story of how you and Daddy met again." Sarah smiled, smoothing the dark hair of her 8-year-old daughter, Emily. "Is that so, sweetheart? And do you like that story?" Emily nodded enthusiastically. "It's my favorite. It sounds like a real fairy tale." On the other side of the garden, Ethan was playing with their 5-year-old son, Michael, both laughing as they tried to balance a book on their heads. The scene made Sarah's heart swell with love. Grandma Rose, now a proud 85-year-old great-grandmother, observed everything from her comfortable chair, a serene smile on her wrinkled face. The party wasn't just a family celebration. Around the garden, children and adults from diverse backgrounds mingled cheerfully. They were beneficiaries of the Thompson Foundation, which over the years had become one of the largest organizations promoting education and culture in the United States. Sarah, now a respected writer and manager of the foundation, walked over to Ethan, who greeted her with an affectionate kiss. "Thinking about how much we've changed?" he asked, recognizing the reflective look in her eyes. "Yes," she replied, leaning against him. "It's amazing to think about everything that's happened since those days in the hospital." Thompson Technologies had become a world leader in sustainable technology, with Ethan at the forefront of initiatives that combined innovation and social responsibility. But for the couple, their greatest success was the family they had built and the lives they had touched through the foundation. "You know," said Ethan, watching the children play, "sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had that accident." Sarah smiled, intertwining her fingers with his. "I believe that somehow we would have found each other. Our paths were destined to cross." At that moment, Emily ran up to them holding a book. "Mommy, Daddy, can you read to us, please?" Ethan picked up his daughter, laughing. "Of course, Princess. How about we gather everyone for a reading session?" Soon, children and adults settled in a large circle on the lawn. Sarah opened the book, a special edition of The Little Prince, and began to read, her soft voice filling the afternoon air. Ethan, seated beside her with Michael on his lap, closed his eyes for a moment, letting himself be carried away by his wife's voice. It was like being back in that hospital room years ago, when her words brought him back to life. The family story was known to all. The billionaire in a coma, the dedicated hospital employee, the love that blossomed against all odds. But for Ethan and Sarah, it was more than just a story. It was the beginning of a journey that led them to discover the true meaning of wealth and purpose. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Sarah's voice floated through the garden. "It is the time you have wasted for your rose that makes your rose so important," said the little prince. Ethan smiled, looking at his family and all the faces around. Each person there represented a rose to which he and Sarah had dedicated their time and love. In that perfect moment, surrounded by love, family, and the fruit of their joint work, Ethan and Sarah exchanged a look that said more than words could express. They had not only found love in each other, but also discovered a way to spread that love throughout the world. And so, under the evening sky, the story that began in a hospital room continued to unfold, touching lives and inspiring hearts, one chapter at a time.